So for this one, we're going to tackle a doctrine that explains why the world is the way it is, filled with both beauty and brokenness, and why we humans need salvation. Doctrine 5 talks about the fall of our first parents and sinfulness of all people. It might sound heavy, but understanding this truth is key to appreciating God's solution for us. Doctrine 5 says, we believe that our first parents were created in a state of innocency, but by their disobedience they lost their purity and happiness, and that in consequence of their fall, all people have become sinners, totally depraved, and as such are justly exposed to the wrath of God. In everyday terms, God created the first humans, that is Adam and Eve. We see them in Genesis. They were innocent and good, but when they chose to disobey God, they fell from that innocence and goodness. As a result, every human being since then is born with a sinful nature. We're all inclined to sin. Totally depraved means every part of us is affected by sin, and thus we all rightly deserve God's judgment. This doctrine is essentially about original sin and the human condition. So when we say created in a state of innocency, Genesis tells us that God made man and woman in his image and declared creation very good. Our first parents had no sin initially. They enjoyed close fellowship with God. They are called innocent, meaning morally clean. They hadn't done anything wrong. And by their disobedience, they lost their purity and happiness. This refers to the event in Genesis 3, often called the fall. God gave Adam and Eve a command not to eat from one tree, but they were tempted by the serpent and chose to eat the forbidden fruit. That act of disobedience was the first sin. In that moment, they lost their purity and their happiness. They became guilty and ashamed, and they experienced fear and broken fellowship with God. Paradise was lost. They were expelled from Eden. Their relationship with God and each other and creation was damaged. Before, they lived in harmony and innocence. After, they knew shame and pain and conflict. In consequence of their fall, all people have become sinners. This means that the effects of that first sin didn't just stop with Adam and Eve. Human nature itself was corrupted. They became mortal and inclined toward evil, and they passed that condition on to all their descendants, which is everyone, including you and me. As Romans chapter 5, verse 12 explains, sin entered the world through one man and death through sin. And in this way, death came to all people because all sinned. We're not sinners just by imitation. We're sinners by nature now. We have a natural lean towards selfishness and pride and a quickness to blame others. That's a doctrine of original sin in action. We all have that inner bent toward wrong. Totally depraved. That phrase doesn't mean people are as bad as they possibly could be. We're not all diabolical, evil villains out to destroy the world. Rather, it means every aspect of our being is touched by sin. Our mind, our will, our emotions, our body. There's no pure part of us untouched by the fall. As the Handbook of Doctrine notes, the universal experience of human sin has brought estrangement from God. Even our best intentions can be mixed with selfishness or pride. We cannot save ourselves because even our righteous acts are imperfect and justly exposed to the wrath of God. Since God is holy and just, he must oppose and judge sin. God's wrath is not a bad temper. It's his settled, righteous judgment against evil. If we are sinners, then by justice we deserve punishment. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 3 says we were by nature deserving of wrath. This doctrine reminds us that sin has serious consequences. It separates us from God, and if not dealt with, it leads to eternal separation. It's like a disease that inevitably ends in death if no cure is found. It can be so hard to hear. In our modern culture, people like to think, well, I'm not perfect, but I'm basically a good person. The Army's doctrine challenges that by saying, actually, none of us is truly good by God's standard. Our natural state since the fall is one of sinfulness and separation from God. It's not to beat us down, but it's to tell us the truth so that we understand our need for salvation. If we don't grasp the depth of the problem, we won't grasp the greatness of the solution. Think of a person who's sick but in denial. They won't accept a cure unless they first accept they have a disease. Doctrine 5, it's the diagnosis. We have the disease of sin inherited from the very start of human history. Our symptoms are everywhere. Personal wrongdoing like lying or envy, immorality and systemic evil like war and global injustice. The world's brokenness traces back to that original disobedience, and it persists in each human heart. As Romans 3:23 famously says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." And the consequence, as Romans 6 says, is death. This doctrine aligns with what we see. No one has to teach us to sin, and no matter how advanced society gets, we still contend with greed and violence and selfishness, evidence of that depravity. But even as this doctrine lays out the bad news, hope is on the horizon. The fact that the Salvation Army has Doctrine 6 and onward means that God didn't just leave us in this lost state. The Bible is a grander story than just our sin. We are justly under God's wrath, yes, but the very next doctrine will talk about how God provided atonement. The darkness of Doctrine 5 makes the light of Jesus shine even brighter. We should feel conviction, but not despair, because God's love has a plan from the beginning to redeem us. Understanding Doctrine 5 also helps us practice humility and compassion. It humbles us because none of us can boast of being righteous on our own. We're all in the same fallen boat. It also helps us be compassionate to others. When we see someone doing wrong, we remember there, but for the grace of God, go I. We all battle the same sin nature. That's why in the Salvation Army, you'll find an emphasis on grace. We work with people struggling with addiction, with brokenness, not with an attitude of superiority, but knowing we're fellow sinners saved by grace. So let's sum up 3 key takeaways from Doctrine 5. We were created innocent, but fell. Humanity was created innocent and in harmony with God, but Adam and Eve's disobedience, or the fall, brought sin into the human race. That first sin caused a loss of innocence and intimacy with God, affecting all of creation. It's a sinful nature for all. As a result of the fall, every person is born with a sinful nature. We are totally depraved, meaning sin has corrupted every part of us, and all have sinned. We naturally incline towards selfishness and disobedience, and we cannot fix this on our own. We're deserving of judgment. Because God is holy, our sin incurs his righteous wrath. Separated from God by sin, we stand under just condemnation and are powerless to save ourselves. This doctrine shows why we urgently need God's salvation. It sets the stage for the atonement God provides in Jesus. Doctrine 5 might sound like the bad news, and it is the bad news of our situation. However, it's part of the truth that ultimately sets us free. We don't shy away from talking about sin because unless we know we're lost, we won't rejoice in being found. The beauty is, while we were still sinners, God's love made a way. In our next video, we'll turn the corner to the good news, how the Lord Jesus Christ made an atonement for the whole world so that whosoever will may be saved. There's a remedy for the fall, and that's where we're headed. Thank you for listening, and remember, though sin abounds, God's grace abounds much more. We'll see you on the next one.